The bait in the forest. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. Human soldier Marcus sat under a camouflaged net, eyes sharp, finger ready on the trigger. He had been alone for 21 days. No backup, no signal. Only the wind and strange alien birds that sounded like broken machines. Marcus wasn't hunting for food. He was hunting for movement. He had placed traps all around the area, pressure plates, silent net launchers, and one deep pit covered in fake leaves. These traps weren't for animals. They were meant for enemy scouts, but no enemy ever came. Until now. Snap. A soft click echoed through the trees. Marcus froze. His eyes darted toward the sound. It was the net trap. Something had triggered it. He grabbed his rifle, crawled low, and moved quickly but silently. As he reached the trap, he stopped behind a bush. His heart beat faster. Was it a soldier? A spy? A drone? He peeked out. What he saw made him lower his weapon slowly. It wasn't a soldier. It was a girl. Alien. She was tangled in the net, her skin pale blue and glowing faintly. Her hair was silver, wild and dirty. Her legs were scratched, and her thin dress was torn. Chains hung from her ankles, rusted and broken like she had escaped from somewhere terrible. She looked around, panicked, eyes wide like a scared animal. Then she saw Marcus. She gasped and tried to back away, but the net held her tight. "Please," she cried in broken English. "Don't send back. Please." Marcus didn't move. He was trained not to trust. But this wasn't what he expected. He slowly lowered his rifle and stepped out of the shadows. "I'm not gonna hurt you," he said carefully. The girl flinched. He pulled out a small knife and moved toward the net. "I'll cut you out, stay still." She didn't speak again. Her body trembled, but she didn't resist. Marcus cut the net open, freeing her. As soon as she was loose, she fell to the ground, too weak to stand. Her feet were bleeding, and her arms were thin, as if she hadn't eaten in days. "Can you walk?" Marcus asked. She shook her head. "All right," he muttered. Marcus looked around. No sound. No movement. Still safe. For now. He picked her up gently. She was light. Almost too light. She didn't even fight. Back at his hidden underground shelter, he placed her on a mat and gave her a bottle of water. She drank it like she hadn't tasted water in weeks. Then she passed out. Marcus sat nearby, rifle across his lap, staring at her. Who was she? Where did she come from, and why was she running? Hours passed. Night came. Suddenly she woke with a scream. "They're coming!" she shouted. Marcus rushed to her side. "Hey, you're safe. No one's here." She looked at him with terrified eyes. "They find me. Always find." "Who?" he asked. "Who's chasing you?" She didn't answer. Her lips quivered. Tears ran down her cheeks. Marcus handed her a food bar. She sniffed it, then slowly ate. "I'm Marcus," he said quietly. "Human soldier." She looked up. "Alira," she whispered. "Me, not soldier." He nodded. "I guess that." Alira curled into herself, like she was trying to disappear. Her arms wrapped around her knees and she stared at the wall. Marcus leaned back. He wasn't trained for this. He was trained to kill, to survive, not to take care of crying alien girls. But something inside him couldn't turn away. She had fallen into a trap meant for enemies, but she wasn't one. And something told him, whoever she was running from, they were much worse. The wind howled outside the shelter. The forest was no longer quiet. It was watching. Alira lay curled up on the corner mat, wrapped in a thin gray blanket. Her silver hair spread across her face like a curtain. Marcus watched her from the other side of the shelter, leaning against the steel wall, arms crossed, mind restless. He had never seen someone like her before, so fragile, so scared, yet clearly running from something monstrous. Her body still, shook from time to time, even in her sleep. When she finally stirred, blinking slowly, Marcus stepped closer and placed a small metal cup near her hand. It was warm soup. Nothing fancy. Just old military rations, but better than starving. She looked at it with hesitation, then up at him. "Eat," he said simply. She reached for the cup with trembling fingers and took a small sip. "Why help me?" she asked quietly. Her voice was strange, soft, with an alien tone, but her words were clear enough. Marcus hesitated, then said, "Because you're not the enemy." Alira looked down, holding the cup tightly. "But they say I am." Marcus sat near her, but not too close. "Who are they?" She didn't answer at first. Her lips pressed together like she was holding something back, something painful. "The people who made me," she whispered. "I escaped. They want me back. To finish their war." Marcus frowned. That didn't make sense. "You're not a soldier." She shook her head. "Not by choice." Her thin fingers rubbed the faded marks around her wrists where the shackles had left scars. "They trained me, hurt me, controlled my thoughts, but I broke away." Marcus couldn't believe what he was hearing. "They were turning you into a weapon?" Alira nodded slowly. "I was made, not born, I think. I don't know, just memories, pain, orders. I ran when I could. I don't want to fight, I want to live." Her voice cracked, and tears formed in her glowing eyes. Marcus leaned forward, unsure of what to say. For years he'd fought against enemy machines, drones, and mutated beasts. But this was something new. A living person, created for war but begging for peace. She wasn't just a lost girl, she was a secret buried under skin and fear. He stood up, pacing. "Do they know where you are?" Alira wiped her face and nodded. "Maybe. I think they track me. Inside. Something in me." Marcus cursed under his breath. "Then we don't have much time." He pulled out a small device from his gear, a signal blocker. "This should help, but it won't last forever." She watched as he placed it near her. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "You should have left me in the forest." Marcus stopped moving. "I've seen enough death to know when someone wants to live. You're not the enemy, Alira. You're a victim, and victims don't deserve to be hunted." A silence grew between them. Alira pulled the blanket tighter around herself as if trying to hide from the world. "I dreamed I was back there," she whispered. "Back in the lab. They kept showing me images. Humans screaming, dying. They said you were all monsters." Marcus looked at her, his voice firm. "Do I look like a monster?" Alira stared into his eyes. "No. You look tired." That made Marcus chuckle for the first time in weeks. "You're not wrong." But the moment of calm ended fast. The shelter lights flickered. The motion alarm beeped once, then stopped. Marcus turned sharply. "Stay here," he ordered. He grabbed his rifle and crept toward the entrance tunnel. As he peered through the camera feed, he saw nothing. Yet. But that was worse. Nothing meant someone was being careful. He turned, back to Alira. "If anything happens, run through the back tunnel. Don't wait for me." She stood weakly. "But no arguments," Marcus said. "You've already survived enough. I won't let them take you again." Her voice broke as she asked, "Why do you care?" Marcus didn't answer. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was honor. Or maybe, for the first time in a long time, he saw someone who was more than just a mission. Alira wasn't a weapon. She was a person who never got to choose her life. And now, with danger creeping closer, Marcus made his choice. He would protect her, not because it was his job, but because it was right. The night outside the shelter had turned silent. Too silent. Marcus stared at the blinking screen of his motion detector, its red light flashing once, then stopping. There was no wind, no birds, no crunch of small feet in the leaves. Just Silence. Thick like smoke. He didn't like it. He adjusted the signal blocker near Alira's sleeping form, trying to boost the shield, but deep down he knew it wouldn't be enough. They had found her once, they could find her again. Alira stirred under the blanket, whispering in her sleep, caught in some nightmare. Her hands clenched, legs twitching, as if trying to run, even while dreaming. Marcus gently touched her shoulder. "Wake up," he said softly. Her eyes opened instantly, wide and glowing. She gasped, sitting up fast, her breath shaky. "They're near," she whispered. "I feel them. I always feel them before they come." Marcus frowned. "You sure?" She nodded quickly, holding her arms like they were freezing, like a shadow pressing on my chest. That was enough for Marcus. He checked the backup battery for the signal blocker. It was almost drained. He grabbed his rifle, opened the underground hatch slightly, and crawled out into the night. The forest greeted him with darkness. Even the moon seemed to hide. He moved quietly between the trees, eyes scanning every shadow. Then he saw it, barely visible on the ground, strange footprints. Not human, not even close. 3 sharp claws, spaced like a hunter's steps. Whatever made them was fast and light. His trap lines were still intact, but something had passed through without triggering them. That was bad, very bad. He touched the earpiece connected to the shelter's audio feed. "Alira, lock the door. Don't open it unless I say." Her voice came through, small and afraid. "Please come back." "I will," he said, and shut the feed. He moved deeper into the woods, following the tracks. They circled the clearing and then vanished. No noise, no movement. Marcus felt the hair on his neck rise. He was being watched. Suddenly, a soft crack behind him. He spun and fired. Nothing there, just branches. But something moved in the shadows. He could feel it. As he stepped back, trying to return to the shelter, a sound cut through the air. A soft electronic pulse. Not natural, not animal. A tracking signal. He looked down at his wrist monitor. It was picking something up, a frequency nearby. High, rapid, and close. Too close. He followed the signal and found it buried inside the trap Alira had fallen into. The net, the ropes, the tiny metallic thread, thin like a hair, hidden inside the fibers. His eyes widened. No! They didn't find her. He led them. The trap had been clean, recycled from old tech. He never checked the insides. The metal thread was a beacon, silent, invisible, active. His shelter was compromised. He turned and ran. Branches whipped his face, the cold air biting his skin. He didn't care. He had to get to her before they did. But even before he reached the hatch, he saw it. Movement. Figures in the trees. Not human. Tall, thin, with glowing red visors. Slavers? Soldiers? He didn't know, but they weren't. Here for peace. The hatch to the shelter was open. "No, no," he gasped, charging forward. A scream echoed from inside. Alira. He dove in, rolled, rifle raised. Inside, the room was dark except for the dim red light from the emergency power. Alira stood, in the corner, eyes wild, arms raised. One of the intruders had entered, but not to fight. It simply stood there, whispering in a robotic voice. "Come, obey, return." Alira shook her head. "I won't go." Marcus aimed. "Get away from her." The figure turned and vanished. Not exploded, not died. It simply blinked out of existence like smoke. Marcus ran to Alira. She clung to him, trembling. "They sent a projection," she cried. "A test. They know I'm here." Marcus stared at the blinking red light on the wall. "Then we leave. Now." "Where?" she asked. "They'll always follow." He met her eyes. "Then we make it hard for them." He packed quickly. Weapons, food, backup batteries. He helped her walk. She was still weak, but her fear had turned into something else. Survival. As they disappeared into the forest, the shelter's self-destruct system activated behind them. A soft boom shook the trees. The past was gone. The trap had caught something unexpected. Not an enemy, but someone worth protecting. The real hunt had just begun. The forest stretched endlessly in every direction as Marcus and Alira moved quietly through the trees, guided only by a broken moon above and the soft crunch of leaves beneath their feet. Hours had passed since the shelter exploded behind them, but the danger had not. Alira walked slowly, leaning on Marcus for support, her legs weak but her eyes full of fear and determination. Her body was trembling, not just from exhaustion, but from the strange pulse that still echoed in her chest. She could feel the hunters getting closer. Marcus led her through narrow paths and twisted roots, his eyes scanning constantly, rifle in hand, always ready. But the forest was no longer a place he trusted. It felt alive with watching eyes. Every branch seemed to whisper a warning. He had been trained for survival, but now he wasn't just trying to save himself. He was protecting her, and that changed everything. They stopped near an old, broken-down building covered in vines and mud. It looked abandoned, but Marcus knew better. He scouted first, then brought Alira inside. The walls were cracked and the roof was falling in, but it would give them a few hours to rest. Alira sat on the ground, her knees drawn to her chest, watching Marcus quietly. "You don't have to stay with me," she said softly. "You could escape. I'll slow you down." Marcus looked at her and shook his head. "You're not slowing me down. I chose this. I'm not leaving." Her eyes lowered, unsure if she believed him. He handed her water, then sat beside her. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was full of the things they both couldn't say. But before either could speak, the ground shook slightly beneath them. Not an earthquake. A landing. Marcus grabbed his rifle, eyes wide. "They're here." Alira froze. "How?" "Doesn't matter," he said. "We move now." But it was too late. Before they could escape, the wall behind them exploded. Dust and stone filled the air. Marcus covered Alira, pulling her down. 3 figures stepped in through the smoke. Tall, armored, silent. Not soldiers, not human. Their suits glowed with strange red veins and their faces were hidden behind masks. One of them raised a hand, and suddenly Marcus's limbs felt heavy, like his body was being pulled down by gravity itself. He dropped his weapon, falling to one knee. Alira screamed, reaching for him, but one of the masked figures moved faster than her eyes could follow. A flash of light struck her neck, and she collapsed unconscious. "No!" Marcus shouted, struggling, but he couldn't move. One of the hunters approached him and tilted its head. A cold voice came from behind the mask. "Human, protect her." "Why?" Marcus spat at its feet. "Because she's not a weapon. She's a person." The figure stepped back. "Weak thinking. This one was made to serve, to obey. You interfere." Then the light turned bright and everything went black. When Marcus woke up, his hands were tied behind his back and his legs were chained to a metal post. He was in a dark room, the walls humming with a strange mechanical sound. The air smelled like burnt wires and chemicals. He could barely move. Across from him, in a glowing cage, was Alira. She was awake now, sitting silently with her eyes lowered, her arms hugging her knees. The look on her face broke his heart because it wasn't fear anymore. It was hopelessness. "Alira," he called out. She looked up slowly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't want you to be part of this." "You didn't drag me into anything," he said. "I walked in. I chose it." She looked away. The door slid open, and the leader of the masked hunters entered. His helmet folded back, revealing a pale, sharp-featured alien face with no emotion in his eyes. He spoke slowly. "Human, you cannot understand. She is ours. We built her. She is not yours to protect." "She's not property," Marcus growled. "She's not a tool. She thinks. She feels." The alien stepped closer. "She was designed to destroy your kind. Your defense of her is foolish. Marcus leaned forward, ignoring the pain in his arms. Then I guess I'm a fool. The alien turned to Alira. Return to programming. Begin phase reset. Alira shook her head weakly. No, I won't go back. The alien smiled coldly. You have no choice. He raised his hand, and the cage began to pulse with light. Marcus screamed, pulling against his chains, but they held tight. Alira cried out in pain as the light grew brighter, wrapping around her body like a net of fire. And then, something snapped. Not the cage, not the machine, but something inside. Her. Her eyes opened wide, no longer just glowing softly but blazing with fierce white light. She stood up, and the cage exploded outward. The cage shattered into a storm of light and metal shards. Sparks flew, alarms screamed, and the walls trembled as if the entire base had come alive. Marcus shielded his eyes, coughing through the smoke. When he looked up, what he saw didn't feel real. Alira stood in the middle of the wreckage, her silver hair blowing as if caught in an invisible wind. Her eyes glowed white-hot, her skin flickered with strange patterns like ancient runes, and the air around her rippled with raw power. The alien guard who had tried to reset her was thrown across the room, hitting the wall with a loud crack. He didn't get back up. The other soldiers rushed in, weapons raised, but the moment they aimed, their weapons melted in their hands. Alira didn't scream or cry. She simply looked at Marcus. Move, she said, her voice deeper, layered with something ancient. The chains on his hands and feet snapped open as if unlocked by her will. He stumbled forward, heart racing, grabbing his gear from the floor. What did they do to you? He gasped. She turned, eyes still glowing. They tried to erase me, but they woke something else instead. There was no time to question it. More enemies were coming. Red lights spun through the halls as the base went into lockdown. Together they ran, through the halls, past stunned soldiers, through doors that burst open the moment Alira looked at them. Marcus could barely keep up, but he followed. Alira led him through tunnels and finally to a hangar bay. Inside was a damaged shuttle, half covered in dust and vines. That thing won't fly, Marcus said. Alira stepped forward, placed a glowing hand on its side, and suddenly the engines hummed. It will now. They climbed inside, Marcus taking the controls while Alira sat beside him, her body trembling now that the power was fading. Strap in, he muttered, flipping switches. The hangar doors began to close behind them. Alira raised a weak hand and sent out a burst of energy. The doors jammed and halted, just enough for them to squeeze through. The shuttle burst out, into the cold night air, flying low and fast over the forest. Marcus didn't know where they were going, only that they had to keep moving. But freedom was short-lived. On the scanner, multiple pursuers appeared, black ships with red trails. They were already on their tail. They're fast, Marcus said through gritted teeth. We need to hide. There's a place, Alira said, her voice faint. East of here, Fire Ridge. Marcus remembered the name. A cursed wasteland of smoke, volcanic cracks, and old battlefields filled with deadly gases. We'll die out there, he said. So will they, she replied. With no better choice, he turned the ship east. Within minutes, the green forest turned into burning red land. Fire Ridge lived up to its name. Smoke rose in columns from deep cracks. Lightning crackled in the sky. The air shook from unseen forces. Marcus pushed the shuttle low, skimming close to the ground. The enemy ships followed, but one by one the unstable currents threw them off course. One crashed into a burning hill. Another vanished in a burst of fire. Only one remained. We're not losing that last one, Marcus muttered. I'll handle it, Alira whispered. Her hands glowed again, but this time she winced in pain. Wait, Marcus said quickly. You're too weak. No choice, she said. If they catch us now, everything ends. She stood shakily and walked to the back hatch. Marcus kept flying. The last ship closed in behind them. Then the hatch opened, and Alira stood there, wind whipping through the shuttle, her arms raised. A ball of energy grew between her palms. It was unstable, shaking like it might explode early. She screamed and threw it. The light struck the enemy ship dead on, and the explosion painted the sky in blue fire. The shockwave hit the shuttle and sent it spiraling. Marcus fought the controls, shouting her name. The ship crashed hard onto a rocky slope, sliding across Blackstone before finally stopping near a broken ridge. The metal groaned. Sparks flew. Marcus blinked, blood on his forehead. "Alira!" He crawled to the back. She lay there, unconscious, burned and shaking, but breathing. He pulled her close, wrapped her in a jacket, and looked up at the smoke-covered sky. Fire Ridge had given them a chance, but not safety. They had survived the chase. But the real war was just beginning. Smoke curled around the broken edges of the shuttle, painting the air in ghostly shapes as Marcus sat beside Alira, wiping the dirt and ash from her face with a torn cloth. Her breathing was slow but steady. The firestorm had passed, and for the first time in hours there were no sounds of pursuit. No engines in the sky, no weapons charging. Just silence and heat, rising off the burning ground of Fire Ridge. Marcus leaned back against the bent wall of the shuttle and looked out across the cracked wasteland. Jagged rocks stretched for miles, glowing faintly from underground lava flows. The air shimmered like it was alive. This place was deadly, but it had saved them. He turned back to her when she stirred. Alira's eyes opened slowly, their glow now soft and dim. "You stayed," she whispered. Marcus smiled bitterly. "Of course I did." She tried to sit up, wincing, and he helped her. "I felt it inside me. The thing they buried," she said weakly. "Like a door was forced open, now I can't close it." "What is it?" Marcus asked gently. "What did they do to you?" Alira looked down at her trembling hands. "They made me a trap." Her voice shook. "Not just for you, for humanity. I was built with a signal inside, hidden deep. I didn't know until I felt it start calling them again. That's how they found us. That's how they always find me." Marcus's heart sank. "You mean the trap I set only triggered what was already there?" She nodded. "Your trap caught me, yes, but I was always meant to be found. I was programmed to be rescued, to make someone care, to make someone protect me. And when they did..." She stopped, tears sliding down her face. "The signal would activate, and they'd come to kill both." Marcus looked away, his fists clenched. "So I walked into their plan." "Yes," she whispered, "but I broke the code when you didn't abandon me. That wasn't supposed to happen. You were supposed to run or leave me behind, but you didn't." Her voice grew firmer. "And that broke something inside me. Something they didn't expect." Marcus took a deep breath. "Then maybe it's time we break the rest." Alira looked up, surprised. "You still want to help me? Even after all this? They turned you into a weapon. But you still chose kindness. You still chose to run, not kill. That's not programming. That's choice. And I trust it." She blinked, as if his words didn't make sense. But then her hand touched his, light, hesitant, and didn't let go. "Then we have to go to the core," she said. "There's a place, a relay station, deep in the crater beyond this ridge. That's where the signal began. That's where I was first programmed. If we destroy it, maybe I can be free." Marcus nodded slowly. "Then that's where we're going." The two climbed out of the broken shuttle as the last bits of fuel burned behind them. The journey across Fire Ridge was slow. The ground cracked and hissed with heat. Geysers of steam shot up without warning. Dead machines lay half buried in ash. Old war relics that had fallen during battles long forgotten. Alira walked slowly, the energy within her still unstable. But she seemed stronger with every step. The glow in her body had softened, controlled, as if she was finally taking ownership of it. "This is where they first tested me," she said as they reached the edge of a massive black crater. "They called it Site Zero, Below them, hidden deep in the cracked earth, sat a strange dome, dark metal covered in blinking red lights. "That's it," Alira whispered. "The relay." Marcus crouched beside her. "What's the plan?" She turned to him, her voice steady. "I go in alone. It's keyed to my signal. If it detects you, it'll lock down. But if I get close enough, I can overload it." Marcus hesitated. "It's too dangerous." She smiled gently. "You already risked everything for me. Let me finish what they started." He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. "I'll cover you from here." Alira took a deep breath and stepped down the path toward the dome. Every step looked heavy, like walking toward a past she wanted to bury. Marcus raised his rifle, watching every shadow, heart pounding. She reached the door. It opened on its own. She looked back at him once. He gave her a nod. Then she disappeared inside. Minutes passed. Then alarms. Then a pulse of light, bright and white, shot up from the dome into the sky. The ridge shook. The dome cracked. Then silence. Marcus stood up, ready to run in, but before he could move, the door opened. And Alira walked out. Alive. Smoke rising behind her. No more glow. No more pain. "The trap is gone," she said. "I'm finally free." The sky above Fire Ridge began to clear for the first time in years. Smoke still drifted across the broken land, but the strange darkness that had hovered since the war was lifting. Marcus stood at the edge of the crater, watching Alira climb toward him. She walked slowly, her steps light, different, as if something heavy had finally fallen off her back. Her glowing eyes were now soft, natural, like morning light instead of burning stars. The energy pulsing under her skin had faded. She was still herself, but no longer a weapon. Marcus stepped forward and caught her before her legs gave out. She leaned against him, breathing hard but smiling. "It's done," she whispered. "The signal is gone. They can't use me anymore." He held her close for a moment before speaking. "Are you sure?" "Yes," she said, closing her eyes. "I felt it break. Everything they built. It collapsed inside that place, all those voices in my mind, all the commands, they're gone. I'm free, Marcus." He helped her sit against a rock and opened his emergency pack, giving her water and a food bar. She laughed weakly. "You're always giving me food." "Yeah, well," he said with a small smile. "I like seeing you alive." She looked at him for a long second, and something in her eyes changed. Not fear, not pain, but something warm. She leaned her head on his shoulder, and he let her rest there in silence. The firestorms had died down. The forest in the distance shimmered under a rising sun. For the first time in days, there were no hunters, no traps, no alarms, just peace. "What now?" she asked softly. "You have your freedom. Where will you go?" Marcus took a long breath. He hadn't thought that far. "I don't know," he admitted. "I haven't had a home in a long time, just missions, orders, battlefields." Alira looked up at him. "Maybe we find a home together?" He looked down at her, surprised. She wasn't joking. Her voice wasn't uncertain. She meant it. "You want to stay with me?" he asked. "Even after everything?" "You were the first person who saw me as something more than a tool," she said. "You gave me a chance to live. That means more to me than anything. I don't know what the future is, but I know it feels safer with you in it." Marcus nodded slowly, then smiled. "Then we find somewhere quiet, somewhere warm. We start over." She reached out, taking his hand. "No more cages. No more traps. No more running," he added. They rested a little longer before starting their journey across the quiet wasteland. It wasn't easy. Every step reminded them of what they had survived. But they walked together, side by side, not as soldier and weapon, but as two people who had saved each other. Days passed. The land became greener. They found a human outpost, half abandoned but safe. The soldiers there didn't ask questions. They offered shelter, food, clothes. Alira wore a loose jacket and boots far too big, but she smiled anyway. Marcus helped repair the fences. For once, he wasn't holding a gun to kill. He was building. One evening, as the sun dipped low, they stood on the hill outside the camp. Alira turned to him. "Do you ever think about how different this could have ended?" He nodded. "Every day. I set a trap. And I caught you. But not the way I expected." She chuckled softly. "You caught something more dangerous than an enemy." "Yeah," he said with a grin. "A girl with glowing eyes who melted weapons and nearly exploded my bunker." She smiled and stepped closer. "And yet, you never..." "Because I saw the truth," he replied. "You weren't built for destruction. You were meant to survive." She reached up, touched his cheek, and whispered, "You changed my fate, Marcus." "And you changed mine," he said, his voice quiet. "I never believed in second chances. Until you." They stood there as the wind passed through the grass, not saying anything more. They didn't need to. The storm was over, the chase had ended, and in a world broken by war and shadows, a human soldier and a once-engineered alien girl had found something rare. Trust, freedom, and maybe something close to love. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Because some traps don't just catch enemies. Sometimes, they catch hope.